So in this second video, we're going to start looking at what are called parallel arrays. And essentially all parallel arrays are they are multiple arrays that are used to represent an array of records. So we talked about how using lists and arrays wasn't really the best option, or lists instead of arrays wasn't the best option because lists contain mixed data. So if we have, for example, on this next slide, I have student names with test scores. These are strings, these are test scores. And yes, we want them to be paired together, but it doesn't make sense to put them in the same thing because test scores are evaluated differently than names. So what we're going to do is we're going to create parallel arrays where we have arrays of the same length that essentially have pairs of data. So here we would have two arrays, one for names, one for test scores. In the names, we'd have Jones be first, and in test scores, Jones' test score would be first. Zeller would be second, Zeller's test score would be second. Smith would be third, Smith's test score would be third. So essentially, we have multiple arrays that are paired. They're called parallel because they're essentially running side by side. We have the names saved in one and their indices pair up with their test scores saved in another. So that's what a parallel array is. The big thing is that the indices between the two match. You have one type of data on the first array, the second type of data in the second array. So what we're going to do is we're going to just write an example together. So if you can start Python and do file, new file, there we go, file, save as, there we go. Going to Unit 7, we'll do Unit 7, Lesson 4, but this time we'll do an example for parallel arrays. So we're going to do Unit 7, Lesson 4, parallel arrays. So I'm just going to show you an example of two running side by side that pair up together. So we have definition main with our colon there. And then we're going to create two different arrays. We're going to create one for names and one for test scores. I'm going to have name array, and that's a blank array. And then I'm going to have a test array, which is another blank array for now. And this is going to hold the student names. And the second one is going to hold the student test scores. And so essentially, as I prompt the user to create these two, I'm going to create these two arrays parallel side by side and add into the array the name for one into one array and the name and the test score into the other array side by side. They're going to be parallel. We're going to have them enter in for 5 students. So we'll do 4x in range. And we'll just do 5 because we want them to cycle 5 times. And we need our colon here to indicate we have a loop. And then we'll prompt the user to enter in the information. So we'll do name and we'll do an input here. Please enter in name. And then we'll do a test score and we'll say, please enter in the corresponding test score. Now remember here that when we have a test score, we're going to want it to be a number. So we want to do an eval around that to evaluate. But these 2 lines of code get the 2 values from the user. And then from here, we're going to add both values into their respective arrays. So essentially what we're going to do here is we're going to do name array.append and add name to it. So this adds the student name to the name array. And here we have test array.append. We're going to add the student test score to the test array. So notice that we're creating these side by side. So the name gets added, the test get added, and they're both added at the same indice. So that's really what's happening here is we're adding in these values side by side. So here's the creation of our parallel arrays. And by creating them in this way, we have paired data. Index 0 in each array pairs up with a name and test score. Index 1 pairs up with a name and test score. And then what we can do is we can actually use this knowledge to help us print these out to the screen. So I'm going to do another 4x in range 5. And I'm going to do this because I'm going to cycle through indices 0 to 4 in both arrays because I want to print both to the screen. And then here I'm actually going to print out to the screen for each index. So I know at index 0 in both arrays, the name entered and the test score entered pair up. So I can do a print statement here, and I can say print name of student. Then I can do name array, and I can do X for the index because that's going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I can do a print statement and do test score of student. And notice then I can use the exact same index here. So I have test array, and I have the X value as well. And then I'm just going to do a print line, blank line to give me some space. But look here how we can use, okay, index 0, index 0, index 1, index 1, and we can print them all to the screen in pairs. So now if I run this, I'll run these side by side. First, I notice I forgot my main down here. That's why it didn't run completely. So we'll remember to add that in. This actually runs the program. Now if I run this, what I'll see is I do Sarah, say she got a 90. Laura, say she got a 100. Jack, say he got a 95. Evan got an 82. Alyssa got a 77. And then what this will do, so this first part adds the values into the array, and then we can see, okay, at index 0 in both arrays, I had Sarah with a test score of 90. Laura is index 1 with a test score of 100. Index 2 goes with Jack and his score of 95. Index 4 is Evan and his score of 82, and index 5 is Alyssa and her score of 77. So you can see in there how those arrays pair up, how we're saving the values purposefully, and then we can actually use those indices to our advantage, knowing that they are paired up. So again, parallel arrays are really simple. They're just two arrays running side by side that contain paired values.